You can check out PatriotDepot.com. Call 844-377-8052. That's 844-377-8052 or PatriotDepot.com. Use promo code USA.
Reaction continuing to come in after a Supreme Court ruling on Monday. USA Radio Network's Chris Barnes has the story.
The lead plaintiff rejoicing after the Supreme Court's historic LGBTQ decision yesterday when it ruled that federal law does prohibit workplace discrimination against gay, lesbian, and transgender persons. In other words, workers cannot be fired over their sexual orientation and gender identity. On NBC's Today Show today, Gerald Bostock said he was, quote, filled with joy and gratitude at the ruling, thanking the Supreme Court justices for, in his words, making the right decision.
80% of Americans say they're now concerned about a second wave of coronavirus. That's according to a new Axios Ipsos poll. 11% say they're not very concerned, and 6% say they are not concerned at all. The poll was conducted June 12th through 15th. This is USA Radio News.
At the American Veterinary Medical Association annual convention in Washington, D.C., I spoke with Dr. John Howe, AVMA president, about One Health.
One Health is really a collaboration between physicians and veterinarians or public health officials. For example, in Minnesota, our state public health veterinarian deals with zoonotic diseases, rabies, for example. Animals are sentinels for humans, and humans are sentinels for some infections in animals.
There's more valuable information at avma.org.
The United States death toll from COVID-19 in nursing homes and other long-term care facilities has topped 50,000. Marking a grim milestone in a pandemic that is taking a heavy toll on the oldest and most vulnerable people. Republican Congressman from Louisiana Steve Scalise tells Fox News guidelines were not followed and folks need to be held accountable.
CMS issued guidelines to every state. States run nursing homes, and we saw most states followed those guidelines the right way, but there were a few states where they went their own direction. In fact, they required that if somebody was COVID positive, that they had to be sent back to the nursing home, and expressly prohibited the nursing home from even checking to see if they were COVID positive. And in those states, we saw deadly results. And I'm talking about thousands of people that died in nursing homes in those states that should have never died. If the states would have followed the guidelines, meaning if you've got somebody COVID positive, you don't send them back to a nursing home if the nursing home can't properly isolate and take care of them. And yet that's the mandate that these governors gave in violation of federal guidelines. I've asked that we bring those governors in and ask them to explain why they violated the guidelines, and it gave these mandates that ended up killing thousands of seniors in each of their states.
Scalise sending oversight letters and hoping this can be looked into to the governors of New York, Michigan, and New Jersey. For USA Radio News, I'm Tim Berg.
The following is an America Matters media production. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of the station or its advertisers, although we think they should. But that's the opinion of America Matters Media.
America spends 5 to 10 times more on health care than any other country in the world. Then why does America rank number 43 worldwide for longevity? Third world countries, such as Cuba and Costa Rica, rank higher than the U.S. So what's wrong with health care in America? This is what's wrong. Our $3 trillion healthcare industry is focused on disease management, while 70% of our planet relies on traditional indigenous medicine that is focused on health optimization. Learn how. Join Dr. Dan Royal on the show The Royal Treatment, bringing you the latest information on the best of medicine, biotechnology, and pharmacology, as well as secrets from the past. These secrets have withstood the test of time and are being rediscovered today. In fact, indigenous healthcare practitioners are using them for the benefit of their patients who seek optimal health and wellness. Now, here is Dr. Dan Royal.
Greetings, listeners. I am Dr. Dan Royal, and you are now listening to The Royal Treatment. As you may know, we're here every week to answer your health questions. Now, if you have a question, you can always email me at droyal@thbclinic.com. That's where I work here in Las Vegas, Turtle Healing Man Clinic. So it's D as in Daniel Royal, ROYAL, at thbclinic.com. Or you can email us, you can call us at 702 702-562-1454. That's 702-562-1454. That's the Turtle Healing Band Clinic here in Las Vegas, which, by the way, is one of the sponsors of our program, along with the First Nation Medical Board. The First Nation Medical Board is under the jurisdiction of the Crow Tribe of Indians, but the Turtle Healing Band Clinic is also under their jurisdiction. In fact, we just solidified a agreement to that effect within the last month, because previously the Turtle Healing Band Clinic was under the jurisdiction of an Indian nation, but a different one. So now everything is under the umbrella of one Indian nation. That's important because the federal government gave the Indians the right to regulate something called traditional medicine. And the Crow Tribe of Indians are the first one to step up and do that. And we thank them for it because it allows doctors such as myself to be dual licensed, meaning we practice conventional medicine, but we need a dual license to practice alternative medicine. And we can do that in all 50 states now, thanks to the First Nation Medical Board, which was set up for that purpose. And it's also set up to license those who have no home, but they practice traditional alternative medicine. That includes chiropractors, acupuncturists, homeopaths, and others. They are part of our network and our team, if you will. Our focus, as you heard during the introduction, is to help you, my listeners, achieve optimal health and wellness. Keep in mind that is the antithesis of what our insurance or medical healthcare system was set up to do. It pays for and reimburses for disease management in a sick care system. Although we call it health, that's a misnomer. And if you want to be healthy, you're going to have to take matters in your own hands, because that's not what doctors are trained to do. They're trained to identify symptoms and prescribe medicines to treat those symptoms, hopefully give you a diagnosis for which medicine or healthcare will reimburse you. But many of you are interested in something more. You want to know how you can optimize your health and well-being, and that's what we're here today to help you do. Now, we're broadcasting on Zoom, if we have been doing for the last several weeks, and when we do that, we'd like to have a guest with us. Today we have a physician, a cardiologist from California, Irvine. He's been part of the faculty there as a cardiologist. He's also someone who works with me on the First Nation Medical Board and has experience working with hospitals and institution review boards that monitor clinical research studies. And we're very glad to have him with us. His name is Dr. Jackie C. Jackie, welcome to the program, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Dan. I'm honored to be here. A little bit about my background. I graduated from the UCI School of Medicine in 1968, then did an internship, then spent a couple of years on active duty, United States Naval Reserve, 69 to 72, then finished my residency training, a fellowship in cardiology at Huntington Memorial Hospital in Pasadena. I did a research fellowship in medicine at Harvard, and then returned to California, went into private practice. I'm in Fullerton, which is in North Orange County. We had the first open heart surgery program. For all of Orange County, the population at that time in 1976 was about 1 million, and now it's about 3.5 million, and there are 26 open heart surgery programs in Orange County. And my training was that we have our first quarter of our career, getting through school, the second quarter, paying off your health and education costs, and getting your family educated. Then the next stage is going to clinical practice, which I did. It ended up putting together specialty heart hospitals, which was then declared not legal, so doctors are not allowed to own hospitals anymore. I experienced that. Then did some consulting work in Nevada. So I've been licensed to practice medicine in Nevada since the early 70s. I was pleased to meet Dr. Dan Royal, couple of years ago. He talked about First Nation Medical Board, Turtle Band Clinic, the IRB, and we've been working on that together over the last 2 years. Just a word about cardiology, and I'm a physician, board certified in internal medicine, and a member and fellow of the American College of Cardiology since 1980. And all about that's about my background and training.
Yes, you have an extensive history, and I appreciate you sharing that with us. We're going to go to a break, but when we come back from our break, I want you to talk a little bit about some of your personal experience that you have had with your own health and stem cell treatments, and maybe as a result of that, what you recommend today. I'm Dr. Dan Royal. You're listening to The Royal Treatment. My guest is Dr. Jackie C., cardiologist in California. We're going to take a short break, but we'll be back. Stay with us. Would you like more energy? A photon sound beam may be the solution you need. A photon sound beam uses electrical energy to ionize gases that generate ozone and light to enter your body directly through the skin. The energy produced by a photon sound beam assists your body's healing process. It does this by improving the electrical energy of the body's cells. Get your photon sound beam by calling 702-444-LUCKY. The optimal cell voltage for the body's cells is between 70 and 100 millivolts. When cell voltage decreases below 60 millivolts, the cell becomes weakened and diseased. For example, cancer cells usually have a cell voltage below 30 millivolts. Call 702-444-LUCKY and order your photon sound beam today. A longer, healthier, and more vital life is only made possible with optimal cell voltage. The photon sound beam has also been found to be effective in relieving pain, inflammation, and joint stiffness, as well as improving immune function. Call 702-444-LUCKY and get a free quote for your photon sound beam. That number again is 702-444-5825.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting. A teenager. Learning the lingo.
Today I'm going to help parents translate teen slang. Now, when a teen says something is on fleek, it's exactly like saying, that's rad. It simply means that something is awesome or cool. Another one is totes. It's exactly like saying, totally, just shorter. As in, I totes love going to the mall with Becca. Another word you might hear is jelly. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will think you're, rad just the same. To learn more, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
I spend a lot of time in the garage, but even more time in the rain, sleet, and mud. In '95, I helped tow your moving trailer. In '05, I helped you get out of a ditch. Yeah, I know I'm a bit rusty, and sadly in '09, it was sparks from me, your handy chains, dragging behind your truck that accidentally started a wildfire.
Sparks from dragging chains can start a wildfire. Spark a change, not a wildfire. Visit SmokeyBear.com. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ, a Lotus broadcast station. The power of radio since 1967.
To join the conversation, call 844-790-TALK. That's 844-790-8255. Now back to the show.
We are back to the show, and thank you for sticking with us for the second quarter of our show. I'm Dr. Dan Royal. I work here in Las Vegas at the Turtle Healing Band Clinic. We're under the jurisdiction of the Indian Nation, and there's a reason for that. As we explained at the beginning, it's so we can practice alternative medicine. It goes by other names: complementary, integrative, traditional, holistic. all designed to help you, the listeners, achieve optimal health and wellness. And one of the ways that we do that is providing our patients with supplements to help them in areas where they need some support, and avoiding drugs wherever possible, because every single drug has a side effect. And just kind of as a rule of thumb, when you take one or more drugs, well, two drugs in particular, they can have interactions. But when you take more than two drugs, we don't really know what's happening. So that can be somewhat problematic for physicians. But one of the first things we do when we see patients in our clinic is to determine what drugs they are taking. We need to know if the symptoms you're experiencing are side effects of the medications you are taking. That's just one of our philosophies that we employ with our patients, at least upon their initial visits. And there are many things we do here that are quite unique. You can check us out, turtlehealingbandclinic.com. That's our website. We're the first clinic in the nation to have what's called the Cell Vital Pulse. It's a chair that was developed by the Cell Vital company in Europe, and it's been found to be 99% curative of those patients who have bladder incontinence or weakness. You can check out their website by going to cellvitaltherapy.com. That's the U.S. website for this very unique chair, which we're using in our clinic for, a multitude of treatments. Before the break, Dr. C was introducing himself, and I would like him to continue, maybe telling us a little bit more about himself, but also his personal health experience. Dr. C, take it over.
Thank you, Dr. Royal. Yes, as a voluntary faculty member at UCI School of Medicine in the 80s, we were working on digital subtraction angiography, which is the use of computers to subtract background you don't want to see during an angiogram, etc., working with physicists and radiologists at the university. And I met a fellow in the 90s who, after the fall of the Soviet Empire, moved from Russia to the United States, and he had a PhD in stem cell biology. I'd never heard of stem cells being used in treatments because that was developed in Russia, and he was one of the early pioneers in that. So subsequently, I went to Russia in the mid-90s, learned about what they can do there, and little did I know that not too long thereafter, I was diagnosed with a, let's say, mild cancer due to all of the radiation that I had absorbed from doing 25,000 interventional cardiology procedures under X-ray guidance. And just so you know, those were hard X-rays, and now with computerization, soft X-rays are used, and the X-ray exposure for angiograms, CTs, other radiology procedures are far lower as far as the radiation dose. But in any event, underwent surgery and radiation and chemotherapy. About 6 months later, they said, we're going to have to repeat your chemo. And I said, no, thank you. I went to Europe. I had stem cells. That was in the year 1996. So 24 years later, here I am, because I had what at that time was termed alternative or complementary medicine. So in my career, I've had the fortunate circumstances of being in cardiology. Started out the angiograms were controversial, then they're done routinely. Started out the pacemakers were controversial, and they're now done. Started out that doing angiography with isotopes, controversial now. Currently is just standard practice. So all of these new inventions throughout my 50 years of practice have been exciting, and it's been exciting to watch the prevention portion of medicine, which I became involved in the early 80s with developing nutritional supplements. First was a cholesterol-lowering agent that was sold as a anti-cholesterol agent, worked very well. Then became interested in intravenous vitamin C delivery, the use of other agents that are not considered drugs, and that's with full approval though of the requirements under the DSHEA Act that was passed in the 1990s, which incidentally all of the manufacturers got together, worked with the FDA, and that was the birth of the field of alternative medicine, and the nutritional supplements that you can get is a result of that. So I've been blessed to have the experience of traditional medicine training, going through what it takes to get it from invention to the patient at the bedside, owning hospitals, being a part of administration, chiefs of staff, a practitioner, and so forth. Our professors in the days of my training trained us to never retire. We spent our last quarter of our lives during education, patient education mainly, young physician education, and teaching. So that's why I was honored to meet and work with Dr. Dan Royal a few years ago, and we were using what's available to us that's inexpensive, called alternative medicine, which incidentally, the UCI School of Medicine now has a new division. The Samueli School of Medicine is part of the UCI School of Traditional Medicine, so there's a complementary and a traditional medicine medical school together at University of California, Irvine now, which you can look at. I'm on the alumni board of the medical school branch of UCI. So they've adopted officially alternative medicine departments, which many other medical schools in the United States have done, particularly over the last decade. So what Dr. Royal is talking about and explaining to you that this is well developed and well understood, and he's in the forefront of making it more available to more patients worldwide.
Well, I appreciate that and your comments. Very interesting story. Now, when you talk about developing things, you have experience with patents. So some of these products and procedures that you invented, you actually patented, as did your son. Is that correct?
That's correct. Thank you, Dan. My son also graduated from the UCI School of Medicine. His specialty was infectious diseases. He's world-renowned. Did a visiting professorship at the Pasteur Institute in Lyon, France. Unfortunately, he passed away 4 years ago while working in Ukraine, working to treat drug-resistant patients with tuberculosis, which is rampant there. And so we miss him very much. So I also had the pleasure of working with my son, who was a specialist in virology, vaccines, and that sort of thing. So that's how a cardiologist ends up with patents related to oral drug delivery for vaccines and other treatments and IV treatments that target organs and those sort of things. I learned that from my son, and so that was a blessing. Thank you for mentioning that, Dan.
No, absolutely. And that's one of the things we'll want to talk about during the second half of our program, but want to talk about what's going on currently and get your thoughts on the coronavirus, which we're continually told is increasing in number of cases. What that really means, for example, we had somebody in our office yesterday from a laboratory we hope to have a relationship with in our dendritic cell vaccine study that we are initiating. We're initiating this study to help patients develop antibodies against SARS-CoV-2 IgG so that they can have what they need to avoid future vaccination. Vaccinations are designed to help us develop antibodies. And if you already have the antibodies, such as when you go to medical school and they want to give you hepatitis, if you already have antibodies against hepatitis, you don't need the vaccine. So we have many patients that are interested in that. But what was interesting is the representative from the laboratory said that they did testing all over town here in Las Vegas. I'm talking about testing for the coronavirus. And when they finally got the reagents to check for the antibody, they tested themselves. They were sure that they had been exposed. As it turned out, they were all negative. As has been all of the patients that we have tested, except for one, which we believe was exposed to SARS-1 back around 2003, which means that her antibody's been good for 17 years or thereabouts. I'm Dr. Dan Royal. You're listening to The Royal Treat, and my guest today is cardiologist Jackie C., who practices conventional and alternative medicine. We're going to take a short break, but we'll be right back. Stay with us. Did you know that 4,000 years ago, the Earth's magnetic field was 5 Gauss? Over the last 165 years, scientists have measured the Earth's magnetic field and found that today it is only 0.5 Gauss, a decrease of 90%. However, your brain needs the Earth's magnetic field to restore energy to your cells. The good news is that a magnetic sleep pad can give your brain what it needs to restore energy to your cells. Order your magnetic sleep pad by calling 702-444-LUCKY. Think of the magnetic sleep pad as a powerful engine in your car. It gets you up hills faster and with less wear and tear. With the magnetic sleep pad, your brain now has the energy it needs to repair your damaged cells, make enzymes, enhance immunity, and protect you against electrosmog, all while you sleep. Get your magnetic sleep pad by calling 702-444-LUCKY. Studies have shown that the magnetic sleep pad can help improve pain, sleep, fatigue, energy, and concentration. Get a free quote for your magnetic sleep pad by calling 702-444-LUCKY. That number again is 702-444-5825.
1 in 3 adults in America have prediabetes, but most don't know it. To let people know it can be reversed before it becomes type 2 diabetes, professional basketball player Julius Randle is doing everything in reverse.
I'm only dunking with reverse windmills. I drove the whole way to practice in reverse. I don't recommend it. This move's called the reverse shuffle. I do recommend it. And it took me months to learn how to speak in reverse, like this. Years 10 almost for diabetes type 2 with living Ben has mom my. In other words, my mom has been living with type 2 diabetes for almost 10 years. So together, we want to say to the 84 million Americans at risk, exercise and healthy eating can help reverse prediabetes. Start by taking a simple 1-minute risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Brought to you by the Ad Council and its Prediabetes Awareness Partners.
Bet he can't say that in reverse.
No word in the English language is less convincing than probably.
Are you sure we should get matching tattoos on our first date?
Sure. We'll probably stay together.
Probably? It's been 23 minutes since I ate. I can probably swim.
You should wait 30 minutes.
Okay, now tell me what to do. Cannonball! Cramp! Oh, I have a cramp.
I can probably hit the green from here.
Probably.
Can I get a mulligan?
Ready to go?
Hey, are you sure you're okay to drive?
Yeah, I'm pretty sober. Yeah, I'm probably okay. Probably okay isn't okay, especially when it comes to drinking and driving. If you're drinking, call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ, a Lotus broadcast station. The power of radio since 1967.
Are you shy and don't want to talk on the air? Text us your questions or comments to 775-237-2266. Now back to the show.
We are back to the show. I'm Dr. Dan Royal. You're listening to The Royal Treatment. For the break, we were talking a little bit about the dendritic cell vaccine protocol study that we are initiating here in the Eternal Healing Band Clinic. The purpose is to help patients develop natural antibodies without side effects to SARS-CoV-2 so that they can, in turn, avoid future vaccination because antibodies show that you are recovered. This is a process by which we first need to obtain the blood of our patients and document that they are negative for the SARS-CoV-2 antibody. Now, you can do this through your own doctor, through most any lab now. Not surprisingly, most everybody that we test is negative, which begs the question, is SARS-CoV-2 real or is it a hoax? This is something that we discuss on this program every week because, well, our government leaders are telling us that we need to wait another year to 2 years before we'll be back to normal for a virus that supposedly has never existed in the history of mankind. We don't know how they know this, but it appears to us that things were never abnormal and there is no reason that we need to slow getting back to what was normal in the first place. But that's another discussion. Anyway, in regards to the study, we first need your baseline blood test, after which we can then do a blood draw. There is a means by which your blood can be harvested for dendritic cells. These are the cells that take the antigen to your lymph nodes where antibodies are produced. This has happened in hundreds of cancer clinical trials to develop cancer vaccines. Once that has been accomplished, once you've developed antibodies, then you have an immune response. But in terms of what we're doing, there needs to be some incubation with a spike protein. A spike protein is the antigen, in this case SARS-CoV-2, that will allow the dendritic cell to begin its recognition process for introduction to your lymph nodes. This is then given back to the patient, and now we have to wait 2, 4, or 6 weeks to retest our patients to see whether they are antibody positive. We should know within the next month or so if this is successful, and we'll keep you posted. Well, we want to get back to our guest, Dr. Jackie C., who's joined us here today. And Dr. C., before the break, we were talking a little bit about, well, some of your philosophy about practicing medicine. I know that you're beyond the retirement age. My father himself is 86 and still seeing occasional patients. He is from the old school and believes, like you do, that you never retire, but you used a lot of part of your life to give back. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Dr. Rao. Yes, in our generation, we were trained from the beginning, and we were very fortunate throughout our career to have mentors. And these were senior physicians who explained to us as we're finishing our training of, about 33 years. I was 33 years old when I first saw a private patient. I'd been in training all my life, starting from grammar school all the way through the military, fellowship, residency, internship, and so forth, that we should take out certain time during our busy part of our careers for our families and for our friends and for our church and our society, which we did. And then in the latter part of the career, to teach younger physicians what patients really want to hear and to learn how to be communicative to the patients regarding their wishes and their desires, and not telling them what to do, but making suggestions and leaving the decisions up to them. And now along comes Google, and so patients now that we see have a lot of information, but they don't know how to process it. So our first question is, well, what did Dr. Google have to say? Then they explain that to us, and then we understand that they're really interested in knowing why they have this illness or not, why they have this condition or not, why the medication or treatment or therapy or surgery worked or not. And it becomes very pleasant and rewarding both to the patients and to the physicians. Currently, with younger physicians at full-time practice, they'll see 30 to 50 patients in an office over an 8-10 hour period, even with computer backup and scribes and so forth. The average the average intervention with patient and the physician is about 14 minutes. Well, that's very difficult to treat a patient with 5 illnesses on 10 medications. In fact, it's impossible. So the interplay between physicians and patients has changed for the better over the last decade, and we should, I think, take advantage of that by doing what Dr. Royal is doing with this radio program, is to get out to other people and say, look, we're here. There are things that you read about. We can tell you what our opinion is as to whether we agree with it or not. Most of the time, we do agree with it. And those things that don't agree with, we have to give reasons. And to speak what Dr. Royal spoke about is with the pandemic, if it was, of coronavirus 2, had to do with statistical analysis. There are certain things called effect size. That means, how many people do you have to test before you believe it? What a p-value is, whether it's useful or not. Probably not. It's artificial. It was first described in 1925. When I was at Harvard, they absolutely insisted you rely on that. And that has to do with the null hypothesis and other fancy words. Then we get into Bayesian methods, and that talks about the bias of the investigators that are doing it. Then they've come up with confidence intervals, and then there's a new one. It's called a surprisal. And that's a surprise based on what the statistics show. So this is new, and that's kind of like the black swan event, and if you're not familiar with that, you can look it up on your iPhone or Wikipedia, wherever you wish. And that means that irrespective of how many cases you've evaluated, done the statistics on, there's going to be a surprise in there. They call it a surprisal, or a black swan event. And the black swan event is that the British, when they got down to Australia in the 1700s or whatever it was, the swans there were black, and they couldn't believe it. They were swans. Well, they were, but in Australia they're black, and in England they're white. So we call that the black swan event, and that's a term I'm borrowing from others. You can look it up. So just a blind obedience to statistics and data that was being published every day in the newspapers, particularly over the internet, electronic and digital information overload is incredible. And people became confused because they weren't talking with their physicians. They were talking with health services that were working under, quote, emergency conditions, end quote. And doctors' offices were actually closed for about 3 months. It wasn't like talk to your doctor. It's like follow this, follow that. And their intentions were good. The authorities' intentions were good, but they were relying on statistical analysis. And that is being challenged now. And the gobbledygook I spoke about, effect size, p-value, Bayesian method, surprisal, and confidence interval, that's just a little small part of it. But it really is too complicated to explain to a patient with a 14-minute interval or a telephone call or a telemedicine 5-minute interview with your physician. And so in a nutshell, that's kind of how things have developed regarding this coronavirus phenomenon. I think Dr. Dan will get into this later, but it's the first time since mass communication is available via our iPhones and iPads and other things that we have. Information worldwide is instantaneous, and there's no filter. There's no filter. So we're trained to be filters and filter out what we believe based on best scientific evidence as physicians, and not as public health servants, and they truly are servants, and they're wonderful. But we are, our loyalty is to the individual patient, and these other groups, their loyalty is to society in general. And that's their job. And our job is to treat or not treat and advise individuals. We're the last bastion of individual treatments and recommendations in healthcare.
Well, one of the things that we keep hearing is that the coronavirus cases are increasing, but what's actually happening is that more people are being tested. And what are they being tested for? Well, they're getting the nasal swabs, which are non-specific tests for the non-virulent strains of coronavirus, which people have been exposed to for decades, some say as long as 60 years in this country, the United States. So they're being diagnosed with coronavirus alpha or beta strains, and it's being called COVID-19, which is a misinformation, maybe misdirection, because we're not seeing those people diagnosed with the nonspecific antigen test showing positive for the antibody. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll continue our discussion. We're in our last segment with Dr. Jackie C, and I'm going to talk about what happens when you don't get a proper antibody response. I'm Dr. Dan Roy. You're listening to The Royal Treatment. My guest today is Dr. Jackie C. We'll be right back after the break. Stay with us. Did you know that stem cells are present in all of us, just waiting for an opportunity to regenerate your organs and other body tissues? Studies show that your own stem cells are released into the bloodstream following a trauma. However, a plant-based supplement called RBC Blend has been found to increase stem cells in your blood without trauma. Order your RBC Blend by calling 702-444-LUCKY. One study showed that participants who used RBC Blend increased stem cells in their blood by over 100% after only 2 weeks. Increase your stem cells with RBC Blend by calling 702-444-LUCKY. Stem cells are the ultimate anti-aging treatment. For example, they can be used to improve facial appearance, skin tone, and hair growth. Stem cells can also help with muscle aches and joint pains. Increase your stem cells with RBC Blend by calling 702-444-5825. Could RBC Blend be what you need to achieve optimal health and wellness? Find out today and order RBC Blend by calling 702-444-LUCKY. That number again is 702-444-5825.
You wanted to see me?
Yes, please, have a seat. So here's the thing. When this company brought you on, we took a chance on you. You didn't have that 4-year college degree we typically look for.
Right.
But we gave you a shot anyway. And since then, you've worked incredibly hard and given it your all.
Thanks.
You've been an important asset to the team, but I don't think you can be an intern here anymore. We want to hire you.
You're serious?
Absolutely.
Find your next great employee. Introduce yourself to the Grads of Life. Who are they? Talent worth knowing about. Young adults of unique determination and experience. An ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or even mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
I won't let you down.
I know.
Don't miss out on a resource many innovative companies have already discovered. Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
So here's the choice. Some people say the USA is finished. It's evil, a has-been, full of hate and injustice. The U.S. Constitution should be trashed and the Bill of Rights abolished. No free speech, no gun ownership. Competition and free markets are bad. We're all too stupid. For our own good, the government must own everything and know all your secrets.
Other people say that America has created the freest, richest, happiest, most generous society that has ever existed in the world. That's why millions of people are desperate to come here and escape their brutal lives in Cuba, Venezuela, North Korea, and 100 other countries.
In America, we have the right to succeed, the right to our own living, the right to have a family, the right to believe in God, the right to have our own ideas, the right to be safe and secure, and the right to be left alone.
Where do you stand? Help us save the Constitution and restore the American dream. Go to SaveMyFreedom.com.
Brought to you by the American Media Council.
This overload. Shannon Lawson here. Join us for the Nevada Radio Roundup, Fridays at 2 p.m. A good news variety show all about the local scene. The Nevada Roundup, Friday at 2.
Want to expand your advertising dollar? Sponsor this or any America Matters program by calling 775-827-8900, extension 2. Now back to the show.
We are back to the show, my friends, and thank you for sticking with us. You're listening to Dr. Jan Royal and the Royal Treatment. My guest today is Dr. Jackie C., cardiologist in California on the faculty of University of California, Irvine. He also practices alternative medicine and works with me on the First Nation Medical Board. Now, if you would like to reach us, you can always email me directly. Perhaps you need some free medical advice. You can email me at droyal@thbclinic.com. That's D as in Daniel, Royal, ROYAL, at THB for Turtle Healing Band Clinic, thbclinic.com. Or you can call us here, 702-562-1454, 702-562-1454, and we will give you answers to your health-related questions. Now, before the break, I mentioned that I would share with you what happens when you do not get an adequate antibody response. This happened in the last couple of years over in the Philippines. Bill Gates Foundation sponsored a French company to develop a vaccine for dengue fever. It may have been called dengue vax or something of that nature. The people who are most at risk for dengue fever are children, ages 5 to 9 years of age. Dengue fever comes from mosquitoes. Well, what happened with the vaccine was that the children did not get an adequate antibody response. When this happens, the individual becomes more susceptible to the disease than if they had not been vaccinated. What that means is when they were exposed, in this case, to the disease from the mosquitoes, they developed a cytokine storm and died. So hundreds of children were dead because the vaccine provided them an inadequate antibody response, and thousands were made more vulnerable because of it. Now, there is a recent development, which is why I share this with you, where the United States gave $1.2 billion to Oxford University to develop a vaccine for the SARS-CoV-2, virus, also known as COVID-19. Recent reports show that the vaccine is currently a failure. Why is it a failure? Well, because it did not provide an adequate antibody response in the monkeys that were tested. You need to be aware of this because unless the vaccine can be proven to be both safe and effective, you can be made more at risk to the virus after vaccination. Dr. Jackie C., any comments on that?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Rell. Yeah, vaccines have always been of interest to us in cardiology and to me in particular because of my son's work in virology, immunology, and allergy. We spent a lot of time, money, and effort on developing oral vaccines, meaning we could put the virus into little small microscopic capsules. They could swallow that, it's taken up into the virus patches, part of the lymphatics of the intestine, and get into the bloodstream and go to the lymph nodes and induce an antibody response. And what Dr. Royal was explaining about, what about those people that don't develop an antibody response? Well, they have other antibodies that are there from similar viruses that have been filtered out through the body, because throughout our life we're bombarded with viruses, phages, which are neither viruses or bacteria. So our immune system is incredibly complex, and to expect us in science to be able to control all of these parameters for all of these illnesses, such as coronavirus, which is really a common cold virus. 20 years ago, it was said, well, the coronaviruses and the enteroviruses like Coxsackie B, etc., don't need to develop a vaccine for those because patients never die from that. And I can show you that in writing 20 years ago. Well, what happened, as Dr. Rell explained, is that these viruses have mutated, and what was a common cold became a potentially very serious, deadly virus. But we don't have adequate ways to test for it, as he explained. I talked a little bit about statistics, but depending upon a vaccine response means that the body's immune system has to be alerted to the particular virus, whether it's mutated or not, that particular virus in that particular time. And this was learned during the attempted development of HIV vaccines, which incidentally there have been 10 of them at a cost of billions of dollars all over the planet, and not one of them worked yet. And it's been 20 to 30 years of development in that arena. So we can't expect the scientists, even with all the tools that we have, come up with this rapidly. So the whole field of immune therapy is used in cardiology for vascular disease. That's now understood as an immune disorder. Cholesterol is a marker for it, probably not related to the cause. It's probably viral or immune-mediated. So we find that almost all illnesses are related to the immune system. In fact, they are. And in children, they're particularly different than in adults. So we cannot develop a virus that works for all age groups. So that's something that's also a problem that has not been separately addressed. So my only response to the question from Dr. Royal is, yes, the immunology and vaccine field is in a rapid state of flux. It's very difficult to predict the future. It's hard to predict exactly when you're going to have the answer because in science we can talk about what we have before us and we try to make future predictions, and we're just as often wrong as we are right. And the fear of failure cannot be a part of the attitude of scientists, physicians, administrators, whomever. We can try to predict the future, but more often than not, we're going to be wrong. So when we do figure it out, it might be timely and it might not. And that's just the nature of healthcare and medicine. Thank you.
Well, we can see that money doesn't necessarily solve the problem. So in the case I just mentioned, the United States has given $1.2 billion to Oxford University to develop this SARS-CoV-2 antibody, and they have failed. Whereas we think that this can be done in a couple of ways. One is what we're doing in our clinic to help patients use their own dendritic cells to develop natural antibody against SARS-CoV-2. Now, the challenge with that is it's a little labor intensive because we have to do it for each and every patient. But you mentioned something very interesting. It is possible that eventually a universal dendritic cell line can be developed that could be administered as a capsule, like what you were talking about, and then they wouldn't need to draw the patient's blood, expose it to a spike protein and so forth. They would simply have to take the capsule. So that might be one of the goals. So we've got a few minutes left here in the program, and before we close out, I would just like your thoughts upon what you think is coming in the future and how we can prepare for that.
Well, thank you, Dan. What's coming in the future is bright. We have more computing power. We have more postdoctoral graduates and students, both in science, basic science, healthcare, in all fields. The healthcare is now a universal issue. It's not a country-by-country issue. So this COVID virus phenomenon has brought us all together, all the different countries, and we can develop databases that are international. So sometimes what works in one country won't work in another, and that's a very long topic. But I just want to mention that if something that works in America doesn't necessarily work in Spain, or something that works in England doesn't necessarily work in Australia. That's because we're all individuals. There are almost 8 billion of us now on this planet, and each and every individual has an individual genetic makeup and immune system makeup. We're all different in some way, shape, or form. Now, the vaccinologists, they try to take advantage of that, looking at all the different variables through the genetic code. And there are computer programs that are very forward. We don't have quantum computers yet, but in the future we will. So we have tremendous electronic and computer ability to discover and improve things, but we don't have as much as we need. We will have that probably before we have a universal vaccine, which is the goal for us all. Thank you, Dan.
Well, thank you for those comments. It's very interesting food for thought. The fact that we are different and a universal vaccine probably won't work for everybody. There needs to be some variations given our genetic differences. Well, thank you for being with us today, Dr. Jackie C., cardiologist from University of California, Irvine, who also practices alternative medicine and works with me, Dr. Dan Royal, on the First Nation Medical Board. Now, if you would like more information about the First Nation Medical Board, simply go to the website, firstnationmedicalboard.com. If you'd like more information about our clinic, Turtle Healing Band Clinic, then go to that website, turtlehealingbandclinic.com. I'm Dr. Dan Royal. You've been listening to The Royal Treatment today. We're here every week to answer your health questions. Next week, we'll be back with another episode of The Royal Treatment. And hopefully your time with us has been well spent and you've learned at least one new thing. Until next week, my friends, may you all be well. Bye for now.
Rich is just a really, really, really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and